Hi everybody, it's Jane from Jane Stitches. This is Merigold in her new gown, and that's what this tutorial is. I'm going to show you how I made this gown, and I used the book Sewing Victorian Doll Clothes by Michelle Hamilton, and I'll put the link in the description below. But as you know, I'm really fascinated with dolls, with hand sewing, historical techniques. And let me tell you, this one is chock full. This is how they also, back in the day, the Victorian times, I guess. Actually, this is like 1830s or 1850s. This is how they would have constructed an adult dress. So stick around, grab some tea or coffee, and watch with an open mind, because this is the first time I've ever put anything together like this, and I was always very intimidated, but I got through it. It was not tedious and horrible. I enjoyed it, and I now know, I learned a lot, and I now know what I'm going to do for my next gown that I make for Meredith or for Merigold here. All right, you guys, I'll see you in the next step. Hey there. So here are my pattern pieces. This is pattern number 4. This is the bodice front, bodice back. And then I also have these incredible pagoda sleeves. But right now I'm working on the bodice. So it says to cut 1 pair of the shell fabric. This is my shell fabric. And then 1 pair of the lining. And I'm using, let me grab a piece, this Liberty Tana Lawn cotton. And it's like a batiste. It's really beautiful. If you know Liberty fabrics, it's just a beautiful cotton, and it's the perfect weight when making doll clothes. Now, what they say is, let me show you, the lining and the shell fabric are to be basted together, and that's what I've been doing. So you could see my basting stitches, right? And that is because they're to be treated as one. So it's not a traditional way for me of sewing. And the reason I'm following this pattern is because I know I'm going to learn a lot of new techniques. So all I did was thread up a needle and line them up as well as I could. And remember, we have to have the right side of the fabric facing out. This is not going to be turned inside out. So I just do these really big stitches to baste. Like this. Oh, and no, I didn't. I did not cut my hand or anything. I was trying lip liner colors. And let me tell you, I washed my hands at least 3 times since. And this is known as a long-lasting lip liner, and indeed it is. All right, I made a little knot. Gonna cut that off. And now I have the front, let's see, so you can see, and the back. Now, when I did this, I did consider the stripes, you know, where they're going to land. So for the front, where it has the grain line, I just put that right down the middle of this off-white stripe. And then for the back, I did the same thing. I just mirrored. So, right, it's this way and then this way. or what I did is I just lined up the striped fabric, wrong sides together, and then I traced the pattern, pinned, and cut it out. So I have these nicely matched back sides. All right, and then it says I have to make some darts. And of course, I marked my darts on my shelf fabric. So now I'm going to have to remark them. So what I do, put this down, and I'm using my friction pen. Okay, I'm just checking my camera here. I'm using my friction pen, and I'm just marking right at the bottom of the dart, making 2 little marks for the bottom on each side. And then I made a hole before. I just used, you work like this. I have got my tools everywhere, and God knows where my seam ripper is. But I used my seam ripper, and I made 2 little holes right at the top of the dart, so my pen could fit in there like that. Let me get a little bit closer. So now you see those 2 marks and these 4 marks down here. Grab my ruler and I just line them up and mark my dart. So there are the darts. Now I have to sew these. So I line up the bottom, so those 2 little marks I made are touching, and then I'm going to put a pin through here, just like when we're hand piecing, you know, lining up the front and the back line. And boy, is that off, because I lined up the wrong mark. So again, I'm going to go through the front and the back right on the mark, as they say. I'm just going to pin that and then go all the way down to the beginning or the top of the dart and do the same thing. And now I've got that marked. I'm going to hand sew right down there. Let's see if I have a needle threaded. I don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this one also, and then I'll come back here and show you how I stitch that up. This over, press the seams or the dart to the sides. So going, there you are. So going this way. Grab my iron. While that's heating up, let's see how that looks. Looks pretty good. Little bit uneven, but That's all right, but you can see, you know, how if you really are a stickler, you really want something, you know, that's really symmetrical, you have to be very, very careful and be a perfectionist, I think. All right, so I'm gonna iron this to the side. It's also gonna remove my marks with my friction pen. And then this one. Now the other thing I realize would be really useful is having a ham, a tailor's ham, but for doll clothes. So I'm gonna give this a press here. You might see me making those. That way, when you want to really press the dart properly, you put it over a rounded ham and you press. But there it is. So there's the front, all done, dart sewn and pressed to the sides. See you back here for the next. So next step is to sew the shoulder seams. Look at the difference right here. That's all going to come out in the wash. That's why I love doing this, because it's like something I'm not used to, so it really keeps you on your toes. All right, so I'm going to sew the shoulder seams and overcast the edge, but first, I don't have a seam allowance here, so I'm going to draw out a 1/4 inch seam allowance, because that's what the pattern calls for. I'm only going to do it on one side. If I try to eyeball that, forget it. Okay. Now, I also noticed that the length of this is different than this. I don't know if that's the way it's supposed to be, but what I'm going to do is just kind of put it in the middle so I have the same amount hanging over on that side and that side. Grab my needle, which is knotted, and make sure everything's lined up. And start. I'm going to take a back stitch. You could totally do this on the machine. I want to, of course, hand sew. Right, getting to the end. And I'm going to do a quilter's knot. Whoop. And now to overcast. So overcasting is just finishing the edge, right? All this raw edge here. So I'm just going to put my needle in and just overcast. And I'm coming down probably 1/8 of an inch. Don't pull too tight. And this just keeps everything from raveling and making a mess. And with 4 layers of fabric, I think it's a really good idea. Whoop. Okay. Same thing. And what it says, the darts in the front of the shoulder seams are stitched, overcast, and pressed to the back. So this way. Let me show you what the overcast seam looks like. Whoop. There it is. And you'll see this friction mark disappear in a second. And there, now my shoulder seam is pressed to the back. All right, I'm going to finish the other side the same way over here, and then I think we're going to be sewing up the side. So the shoulders are done. Look how quickly this all comes together. I press them to the back, and now we have to do the sides. It's the same thing. So we're going to be sewing up these sides this way and then overcast and pressing it to the back. Let me show you again how I mark the seam allowance, because again, if I eyeball it, it's not going to be consistent. And of course, when you use your machine, you've got that seam allowance built right in. So there's one side. And the other. So we put these together. Grab a pin. I'm going to use my sequin pins. Applique pins. I have so many pins. All right, again, I'm going to stitch up, back stitch, stitch, back stitch, knot off, overcast, just like we did with the shoulders, and then I'm going to press them both to the back. See ya when that's done. So the pattern calls for the edges of her neck, her waist, or the neck, the waist, pretty much everything to be finished with cording. And it says to cut a 1-inch piece of bias. So I have a lot of this antique bias binding. As you can see, I got it for 50 cents. I hate when they ruin these old labels like that, but I bought all of it. And I think this will be fine. The color's fine. it's just under 1 inch. So what I'm gonna do is iron this open. And they say you can use pearl cotton, which I have, as the cording. So let's see. And that gives a nice little cord. So let's see what the book says, because I have never done anything like this. Move the iron over so we don't go up in flames. It says the neck and waist edges are finished with cord facings. So I have to baste again around the edge 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. Let's grab that. So if I had read through this whole thing, and this is why I tell everybody, read just like a recipe, read from beginning to end, so you don't have to do things twice or forget things. It just makes your life easier. But I'm going to, let's see. Mine is just about 1/4 of an inch. Oh, but it's not, you know, it's not like perfect. But if I had known that, I would have done a better 1/4 of an inch basting stitch. And this is the guide for the cord facing. And I'm not using the same fabric because I just don't, the stripe is so big, I just don't think I'm going to do that. Cut 2 pieces of bias fabric, 1 inch wide and slightly longer than the cord. Enclose the cord in the bias fabric, turning down one edge about 1/4 inch and stitch the cord in with a small running stitch. Fold up the opposite side so the raw edges meet. So I didn't even need to iron that open. You can see how much of an beginner I am at this kind of stuff. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to create that, and then I will come back here and show you what I've come up with. I'm also going to adjust my basting stitch around here. All right, I'll see you then. Here is the piece of bias binding with the pearl cotton inside. I placed it up against the top, and now I have to stitch right underneath it. I want to show you quickly what I did to measure the waist. So you measure it 1/4 of an inch away. So you don't measure down at the bottom, you measure at the 1/4 inch. And I just took, where is my other piece of pearl cotton, and I just went like this. And I always leave like 1/4 of an inch, you know, extra just in case. And I just kind of moved it along like this all the way, and then I cut it when I got to the end, and I added 1/4 of an inch on that side. All right. So I've got my needle and thread. I've got my pearl cotton inside. Now I'm just gonna stitch underneath it. Now, I don't know how much of this stitching is going to be seen. I bet there's a fabulous cording fit you could use on your machine. But I'm pushing it up with my thumb as I go to make sure it's up in there. And my needle is just going through this whole cotton like a hot knife through butter. And that is how we get our cording. Now I'm going to keep going through the whole thing, and then it says to sew this one down. The bottom is folded up so the raw edges meet. Let me double check that. Turning out and stitching the cording. So fold up the opposite side so the raw edges meet and baste. So it's more basting. So once I do this, I'll come and just baste this one down. Then I'll meet you back. All right, so here's my cording all finished. That's where the pearl cotton goes through. Here's the basted bottom. So what it says is to place the wrong side of the cording against the right side of the fabric, and the cord itself runs along the basted line. As you can see, I didn't baste again. I just marked it with my friction heat erasable marker. So I put the wrong side against the right side like this. And you see how this works, right? So there it is. And when I go to, I'm going to sew this on. Right underneath, I'm going to sew all the way along. And then you take this and you turn it like this. And you get that nice, let's see if I can get that up there, finished edge. Right, you get that little corded edge, and you'll see it better when I use my iron to get rid of that black line, but that really does finish it beautifully. So I am going to sew that. I'm going to sew around the neckline, and I'll attach it, and then I'll come back to show you how I then finish those. After all the pretty sewing, I got my cording attached. And you see what happens here. This gets folded up. You get that beautiful corded finish. Remember, that black line is going to disappear. And then it's finished on the inside when this is sewn. But I tried this on Merigold, my China head doll, and it doesn't fit. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. And I should have tried this on when I first put together this part before doing any of this kind of finishing work. All right, so here's Merigold. You don't want this all the way up because it kind of falls over the shoulders. But anyway, you see how long this is. Her waist, her natural waist, is right here. And I want you to know I took all of her measurements, as I do with all my dolls. And, you know, got excited about this pattern and started sewing. So what I have here is about an inch. I have to go underneath here to see. Yeah, 1.25 inches. So I would want it 1 inch finished shorter. So shorter by 1 inch so that it goes to her natural waist. So I took my pattern piece and I measured up an inch, right? And that 1/4 inch, which you see marked there, is for when I'm finishing it. So now what I have to do, and let's turn her around to the back. Now she's got broad shoulders, so this is fine because these have to be fixed. This is fine. It's the waist, but it's also, turn her back, even when it's finished like that, she still has a lot of excess fabric. So I'm gonna deepen these darts, all right? And in the book, there is an entire chapter on how to adjust for your doll. And of course, I didn't read the entire book back to front, so I'm learning as I go, but I'm enjoying it, I have to say. So I'm going to do all of that. When I take this off, that everything's hand stitched, when I take this off, I'm not going to cut. I'm going to mark and sew as much as I can because I've got all these stitches here and I don't want to lose those or have things get really weird. So anyway, I'm going to go do all of that and I'll meet you guys back here and we'll see how this is all fitting. I put 2 pins. I have this on her now. I took off the corded trim and I just pulled in at the waist while the back was closed and put 2 little pins in to mark where or how much those darts need to come in. So here is the adjustments. So what I did is I remade the darts, right? I marked, take this pin off, the 1 inch mark and the 1 1/4 inch or 1/4 inch away from that. That's where we line the cording up with. And let me pin this back and we'll put it on Merigold and see how it looks. She better not gain or lose weight because I'm not doing this again. And I'm also going to show you at the end of this little clip here what the markings look like on the pattern. Okay, and I am going to cut. Once I sew this cording on, I'm going to cut at the 1 inch mark so we can get rid of that. But here it is. Let's pull this to the back and now that fits quite nicely. So I'm going to carry on and I'll see you back here when I get this sewn on and the bottom cut off. And I'll show you how I finish that. And I also have to add this cording to the neck and the arms. Oh, and let me show you the pattern piece. If I can find it. Hang on, I gotta put Merigold up there. Here it is. So, what I did, here is 1 inch from the bottom, and that is the 1/4 inch mark. And here are the new darts. So when I cut this pattern again, it'll be, you know, more like this, right? And here are the new darts. And everything else looks good. So that's that. Again, you know why they make dresses, they call them, I think, muslins, where they just try it all out on the, you know, out of muslin, not an expensive or fabric or your fabric that you want to make the dress out of ultimately. But I'm learning as I go. So I'll see you back here for the next step. The adjustments have been made. I sewed on the cording, and now all that's left to do with the waist is to finish it. So you see the cording here, And now we just have to turn this over like this. All right. And I'm going to be blind stitching all this all the way around with the darts pressed to the back, the sides pressed to the back. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to pin it to make sure. I'm going to actually pin it from the front like this, because we want to make sure we see that cording. This was not nearly as tedious as I thought it would be. I mean, the corrections were, but I made them once. I will not, hopefully, make them again. All right, so you see what I'm doing here, and I'll show you guys. See if my iron is warm enough to get rid of, yes. Get rid of the friction marks so you could see what that finish looks like. There it is. So I'm going to continue this, finish it. I'm going to do the neck the same way, and then I'll meet you back here. The little bodice is pretty much finished. Let me hold this up. I don't want to take her off her stand because it's a pain. But you could see the cording around the neck, around the waist, around the arms. And now what we have to do is create the back closure. And then after that are the sleeves. So I already marked it, but I pull it not too tight, and for the camera I'm doing it with her lying down. When I'm doing this, when I'm not recording, she's standing up. So I'm going to pin this and see how it looks. So there's how it looks on the back. And there's how it looks for the front. So I am quite happy with that. So now I have to decide how I'm going to close the back, and I think I'm going to do hook and eye. So what I have to do is, the first thing I did was mark the center where her neck is, where it meets, with my friction pen. All right, I'm just going to go by that mark, and then what I'm going to do is fold back and fold back like that. And I think I'm going to do hook and eye. I can make these really match if I just do a little bit more. So just like that. So that'll create a really nice, neat closing. Now I want to show you how I did the inside. The arms were the hardest part of this whole thing. Let me get in a little bit closer. So you could see everything is hem stitched, right? Remember we turned that back. I just hem stitched all along the bias binding, and it creates a really beautiful finish. And this is how they made clothes. So at this point, I could make myself a dress. you see that the arms were a pain when it came down to the bottom. Like, what do I do with that? And she presented a way to do it that I read through a bunch of times, and now, I read through it the 10th time after I finished it because I didn't want to wait anymore. But you fold one under so you have a finished edge, and the other one goes in there, just like you do a quilt binding. So for my next one, I'll do that. But nevertheless, this creates, a nice little finish down there, and the arm looks fine. I'm going to be setting in the sleeves after. And the other thing I wanted to show you was I adjusted, remember this pattern piece, which I'm going to actually make a copy of this and then cut it out. So I have this one for reference. I always do that. And I did the same thing to the back pieces, right? So remember, we had to create these back pieces. So make sure when you adjust your pattern, you do it for the bodice back also. All right, so I am going to go and I'm going to fold these over, press where I want them, and then I'm actually going to fold over and over. And it's not too bulky to me because these are thin, but if yours feels too bulky, you can literally go in and cut some of this right out with your scissors. But I'm going to go like this and like that to right where, do that one more time, right where I want that. And then I'm going to hem stitch this down, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other side, and then put my hook and eyes in, and then after that I'm going to put in the sleeves. And to jump ahead to that, these dolls are all so sized differently. You just can't go with what's in the book. And she says that. She totally covers that. But this is how she recommends the pattern be sized up to 200%. Way too big. So I tried, I don't know why, but it ended up being 152%. And that's perfect because, remember, this is going to be hemmed here and it's going to be sewn right there. So that comes right down to the top of her wrist, and these are the little folds that we're going to be doing, so it's perfect. I am not going to line my sleeves because I don't want them to be too heavy, so I'm going to cut them out of this, I don't know what this is called, but it's a beautiful vintage fabric. But I'm going to cut them out of this and then just go around and fold over once and then twice to hem around. All right, I'll see you back here for that. Change of plans. I am going to line these, and the reason I'm going to line them is double hemming a curve like this is just getting frustrating, and these little stripes are more loosely woven and they're starting to fray. So I'm going to make this easy for myself. I'm using this really, really lightweight Tanalon by Liberty as my lining, so that'll keep it very light. That's what I used on the rest of the piece. So I'm going to just leave the top open, sew around, pink it, and then turn them inside out, and then do the folds, and I'll show you guys how I do that. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is the skirt. Now, my fabric comes, this is vintage or antique, and it came from an estate sale I went to, and the woman just had really beautiful stuff, and I actually have a very cool quilt top of hers that I want to quilt, and it's huge. But all her fabric was from pieces of clothing that she would take apart, but you could see she would trim and then zigzag it to keep it all from raveling. So I don't have one big piece for the skirt. So I'm going to have to piece it. And my skirt is going to be, and it says here in the directions, 3 to 5 times her waist girth. So that's what I'm doing. And that comes to, for my doll, 36 inches. I can't get 36 inches. I think what I have now is 22, 32, like 32. It's going to be fine. But they, in this era that this dress is, that I'm reproducing, they had ginormous, humongous skirts. So I am going to piece these two together, right sides together, lining up the stripes. And yes, I am going to have, let me bring her, ouch, I just pinned my finger. I'm going to have the stripes going down. I'm sorry, going horizontal. There we go. So we have the horizontal skirt, which I think will look really cool, and emphasize the width, because I couldn't get them the other way anyway. But that will look really beautiful. So you get, you get the idea. So I'm going to piece these two pieces together to get as wide a skirt as I can. But right now it's off to the sleeves, and I'll meet you back here after I've lined them and turned them inside out. Here's one of the pagoda sleeves all sewn up. As you can see, there's the lining. And I just straight stitched around. And I did want to say, before I forget, I lined up both of these. And I'm going to be using these little fold marks here. But I did line up so the middle goes through a middle of a dark stripe. And I did the same thing with the other one. So again, if you're using a pattern like this, you have to be mindful of that. All right, so let's turn this inside out. So we just want to push out those seams. I do have this. Whoop. Just kind of run it along and finger press. Now, I don't know if I'm going to trim these. I don't know how. I have to go through my trims, but that would be totally appropriate. Let me show you how I press this. I hate when I get those little kind of corners. So you have to really take your time. And you can see you get a nice curve right there. So I'm going to go carefully through this with both of them, pushing out and finger pressing. These are the little details that just make or break a piece. And let me tell you, you have, for doll clothes making, because everything's so tiny, you do have to use these lightweight fabrics, especially for lining. And I've definitely learned the hard way by using like muslin, you know, like a heavier muslin, and it just becomes like a nightmare because you get a lot of bulk. So the smaller the clothes, the finer the fabric should be. Same goes for the thread. I'm using a 60 weight double ply. It's called Soft Touch by YLI. I absolutely love this thread. I'm obsessed with it. Unfortunately, I can't find it in white. So that's my challenge. I think other people are in love with it like me. They bought all the white. All right. All right. I'm going to do this for the other one and then come back here and we'll look at how, you know, this is folded. It's kind of like this for the, like these box pleats like that. And then that forms the pagoda sleeve, it's called. All right, I'll see you back here in a minute. Let's pleat the sleeves. Now, I'm glad everything's lining up. You do also, as you enlarge a pattern or shrink a pattern, your seam allowances are going to change. So you have to stay on top of that. So here are the pleats. So I'm going to mark these. These two go in, these two go in, these two go in. I might use my air erasable because, where is it? It's brighter. So let's see. Make sure everything's lined up. Why that one's, oh no, that, I see why that one's there. Don't overthink it, Jane. Just trust the process in the pattern. Okay. So I did that. Keep this here to follow. Got my pins. And I want to fold this. To this, like that. And I am really exclusively using my applique pins. Okay, and then this one goes in this way. And as you can see, there's little arrows. This goes like this. This one goes over like that. Do wrong. Let's go this way and find out. That one goes over. Ah. And then this one goes over. What did I do wrong? Oh, this one goes this way. This is what happens when I don't follow our little diagram. I start bouncing around. Okay, and then this goes over like that. All right, so you see our little, how cute is that? So what I'm going to do now is baste, just go across. I have a threaded needle here. So just baste. Doing a little back stitching too. Again, you could do this on the machine. Just use really big stitches. I'm doing the whole thing by hand. Okay. Knock this off. Ugh. And we can take our pins out. And we've got that all basted and ready to go. You can kind of pull these down. And if you need to adjust your sleeve, she says you can add pleats or take away pleats. So let's see how. I'm going to take off her bodice. I haven't sewn the back yet, so I have to be careful because everything's pinned. So these will be set in like that. Let's put this like this. Just so we could see what it looks like. And that's the pagoda sleeve. All right, so I am going to finish the other one, put some snaps, eyes and hooks on the back, and meet you back here, and we will ease this sleeve into her bodice. So far, I have got my hook and eye all done, so that's finished. I put one of the sleeves in, the pagoda sleeves, right here. So I'm going to do the other one. And what I did to place it was I lined up, let me get in closer, the middle of these two pleats with the shoulder seam. So that determines everything about this. So just kind of roll this up. I'm not going to lie, this was not my favorite part of this whole project. But put this in side. Wait a minute. Oh, there it is. Okay. So that's the first thing, is to line that up and pin it. And I'm coming just under the edge of that bias binding, that bias tape. Same thing with the other one, so just under, that's how I lined it up. And then we just kind of roll these in. Wait a minute, I did the wrong fold. Ah, telling you. Oh no, I didn't. I did the right fold. It's late in the day. Oh, okay, back to this. So right between pin, and then you just pin around. And the bottom of the sleeve is going to overlap. So I have the front of the sleeve going behind the back of the sleeve. Okay. Pin. And pin. All right, let's double check. It gets a little distorted with all those pins, but you could see how everything is laid out. And one thing that's bothering me is how far apart this pleat is. So I'm going to do a little cheating here and push that in and push that in like that. I don't know why that's like that. Going through a lot of layers here. Again, I'm pushing that closed. Well, I'm just going to hope for the best now and sew this in. So what I did, remember we have our little edging here. and I just stitched right below, or right on the inside of this. So from this side, I just stitched, and I followed right along that casing. So right along there. Let me show you. Needle and thread. Honestly, this was not the most fun. Oh. Okay. So there's the edge. So I'm just going to come around. And it's almost all by feel, honestly. And don't pin yourself like I'm doing. So I can feel that. And you want to make sure you're not going through to the front, because that won't look good. We don't want to see the stitches. And we certainly have enough layers. All right, so I'm just going along all the way around. All right, so I'm going to go all the way around so it looks just like this one. And then I'm going to come back in here and just finish this off. Whip stitch the edge and maybe baste that extra down a little bit so it's not kind of flopping around like that. So I'll see you back here when I'm done with this. And I can't wait for it to be done, honestly. But I'll see you then. So I sewed together the two pieces that are going to make up the skirt. And I lined up the stripes. The stripes make it really easy. And now what I want to do is fell the seam just to make it nice and neat and tidy. So I want to press this. I'm kind of pulling a little bit with this hand just to press this seam over. This also sets my stitches. Make sure I get that top. And then what I need to do is trim away half of this side of the seam allowance. So I'm going to try, let me grab my big scissors, push this one out of the way for a second. It might be easier as a lefty if I do it this way. It's kind of leaning over like that. So I just want to trim this down. And I'm just kind of going, taking about half of that away. Be careful that you don't cut through anything important. That last little bit. So to fell the seam, now we just have to fold this over and then over again, just like that. Let me come in a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing here. So there's our trimmed seam allowance. This one is going to fold over to the stitching line and then over again, just like that. And grab your pins. And it's hard to pin. I don't have my little rotating cutting mat here, but you want to go through. Trying not to go through my patchwork board. All right, and then you just blind hem this all the way down, and you get this beautiful finished seam that's flat and just looks really nice and doesn't ravel and all that stuff. So I'm going to go pin the rest of this down, grab my needle and thread, and just sew that all the way down, give it a good press, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, so I'm hemming or sewing this close with a hem stitch. I just pick up a couple of threads on the bottom fabric, go through that seam, and like I always say, do as I say, not as I do. I have a really long piece of thread here. You just go down, pick up a couple of threads, and then go through. And you see how little I've got on my needle. And then what you get on the other side are those nice little even picks. I love how that looks. So that's it. That's how you do that stitch, and I will be back when that's done. So for the skirt, I pieced together my two pieces and I felled the seam. Next thing we're going to do, I haven't hemmed anything, we're going to sew the back. So I do this when I make my petticoats. I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe I have to figure out how long I want this little opening, you know, because this is all going to be gathered. I want to have an opening so that we can put the skirt on her. And I'm looking at the directions here. We call this a turn back placket. She doesn't say. So what I'm going to do is sew just like we pieced. So line these up, and I'm going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to mark it, make my life easy. And I think I'm going to be making the waist. I'm going to make a 4-inch placket or opening for the back. Let me just get this lined up and we'll mark that. So this is the top, and I'm going to mark it down 4 inches. And now what I'm going to do is stitch from here to here And then we're going to finish this, and I'll actually show you. I'll come back after I do that, and I'll show you how we're going to finish this whole thing all the way up to the waistband. I've sewn together the back, and this is I think I did, how many inches did I do? I might have increased this. I did. I left 4 inches just to be sure that it fits around my doll and all of that. So here it is, and you can see the black line with my friction pen. I'm going to press and set my stitches, and there goes our mark, but I can see where I sewed. And then the next thing I'm going to do, let's see if I want to do it. Is I need to press this seam open. I'm actually going to do it from the sewn side. And you see me kind of pulling this out because I want it nice and flat. And then up here where it's not sewn together, I'm going to continue, I'm going to line those up. I want it the same, the seam allowance the same as down there. Give that a good press. And so there we have the placket. And now we have to finish this seam all the way up through the placket. So I'm going to turn this under, right? You could do it this way, like we just did with the felled seam, and then turn it over. I mean, if you really want it to be perfect, you could press this first fold like this. Right, and then that got a little wonky. Let's fix that. Let me grab my pins, and then we just want to fold this over. There goes my little pin cushion, and then we just have to pin this down and sew it. I gotta lift this up or I'm gonna be going through everything. Just like we did with the felled seam, so I pinned, I'm gonna sew down with that hem stitch, and then I'm going to turn this over and do the same thing on the other side, and you're going right up through the placket, so right up through here where there's the opening. All right, so I'm going to do that, and then I'll see you back here for the next step. The back seam is all sewn up, and I just love how this finish looks. You're going to love it too. It's just beautiful. Hold that closer. But it's just this beautiful, beautiful finish. Very satisfying. Now for the hem. Next is the hem. So this is the wrong side of the fabric. Let me just bring this up. I just pressed up, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch at the bottom. I do know where I want to end, and it's right here at this line. That's the advantage of using these big horizontal stripes. So I folded it over, pressed it, And then I'm just gonna fold this over like this, lining up that back seam. And I will pin all the way around and then do the same stitch I did here. Now, to get your hem length, you have to try this, you know, on your doll. Have your doll on a stand, and I'll show you that when we get to the waistline. So it's all about putting this on your doll and deciding where you want your hem. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, pin all the way around, hem stitch it, and I'll meet you back here. Welcome back. So now we're making the skirt. We're finally in the home run. So what I did following the instructions was find the front middle, and I'm going to show you on the doll in a second, which is, you know, right opposite our little placket in the back. So make sure, an easy way to do it is just fold this in half and make sure these two sides are even, and it goes right down our seam in the back. And what it says is to fold over the waist, and I've got quite a bit here, and then press. She also said that the front is let me see what her words were. A deeper turn back. So more was folded in the front, less in the back, giving it a kind of, you know, long, a little like mini tiny train, if you will, or the skirts are longer in the back. So let's get Merigold over here. You'll get to see her sleeves, which I'll be honest, I don't know if I love. But there she is, and she's got her pagoda sleeves, and here is the bottom of her bodice. So what I did is put her skirt over her head. And I have to do this all line with her line down. And here's the front, right like that. And then you see there's going to be, you know, her petticoat. So it's going to be pushed out a little bit, but it's like right above her ankles. And then if we turn her over, and we go to the back, it's just slightly longer. I mean, honestly, it's the difference of like a ½ inch, and that is it. Because I don't have a lot of fabric to work here. I could make it even deeper if I want. I might do that. You know, I could undo this a little bit more so it's more shallow, and that'll give us more length in the back. I don't know yet. But that's how I came to this. Now, the other thing that she says about this skirt is that it was all pleated. So where's our front? Let's put her arms out. So it was all like box pleated. And I don't know, and you see that also takes up, when you start messing around like that, it takes up length. So I'm gonna give it a shot, and let me show you the illustration. Sorry, Merigold, I'm gonna put this over. But there are the pleats. So what I have to do is, let's get this off her. Oh, and here's the back. I don't know if I showed you guys the back, but the back is all done. The hook and eye are in, so that's all finished. So you have to break the skirt down in quarters. And there's our front right there. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. So I would mark, you know, here and down the front and down the back, which I already have marked. And then you pleat that all. And my feeling about the pleats is that they're going to be too big. I'd rather have gathers. I'm going to try it, just a few of them. And if I come back and you see that I gathered it, then you'll know what happened. And to gather it, if I decide to do that, I will be by hand sewing 2 rows of large stitches, maybe 1/4 of an inch length little stitches going across, 2 rows, and then I would gather it to, let me show you. Let's take off her bodice. I would gather it, the whole thing, to this length, right? So all this skirt has to be gathered from here to here. Okay, so that's a lot. That's why I'm thinking the pleats and because of the weight of the flat. I love this fabric. It's beautiful. It's not really heavy, but it's a poplin, so it's got that body. So that is where I'm at. I need to evaluate our pagoda sleeves, and it might be that I'm just not used to seeing them because they look just like the picture of the dress. The other thing she has in here to put under the pagoda sleeves are these little like half sleeves, little lace sleeves that would have gone up, I think, to their elbows. So it looks like they have sleeves under the pagoda. Let's see if I could find that picture. No. Oh, here it is. Let's bring the camera in. So you see her sleeves go up even further. There's little bows around them. So we'll see. I have lots of options. And I love these little teeny tiny buttons down the front. And I might do that also. I can't wait to get to that point where I can do something like that. Maybe use some beads or something. I don't have, obviously, buttons that small. But that's what the little undersleeve looks like. And it is really sweet. So I am going to carry on with, here, let's bring this out so you can see the whole dress. I'm going to carry on. This one, by the way, has these pleats down at the bottom, 2 of them over the hem, tucks. And I just didn't have the length. You know, I didn't have enough fabric to do that. But that's so pretty. And it gives the bottom of the skirt even more body to kind of push out. All right, I'm going to carry on with the skirt, and I'll see you back here in a minute. Okay, so you have to take the wrong side of the skirt. So here's my wrong side, and put it against the wrong side of the bodice at the waist, right? I gathered that all up. I'm not doing pleats. It was overwhelming. So I pinned it from end to end. I gathered it all up. I only needed to do 1 row of stitches. This is that place where where I join the 2 pieces of fabric. So I'll deal with that when I get to it. But that would have been like pleats. So I did mark the middle. So I put it at the middle of my bodice. And I flattened out the pleats right there. So it's a little flat in the front slightly. And then all I do is I threaded up my needle. Let's get in here. I'm going to get closer. And you have to go in behind our cording. So, just get my needle in there. right below. And I would recommend taking really small stitches because we want this to be strong. And again, I'm going behind the cording because the cording is supposed to hide all this stitching. We will see. I'm just trying to trust the process here. So keep going. And you have to catch those gathers. Move this up a little bit, meaning the bias binding, the cording. Of course, this thread is getting caught every time I go around there. And it blends in so well, I can't even see it. There we go. All right, so I'm just gonna keep on keeping on, going through those gathers. That a little pull. Let's flip that over. Oops, wrong side. So yeah, it does go over the pleat. So I'm going to keep going. This is going to take a little while. Go all the way down. If I feel like, you know, if I flip this up and I feel like some of the gathers aren't stitched well, I'm going to go through this again. All right, I'll see you back here and we'll see how it comes out. The skirt is attached. We've got our unusual pagoda sleeves. And I have to say, it's a well-constructed dress. The pattern and techniques are something that I've never done before, especially the inside of the bodice. It's beautiful. She's got, what do we have under here? She's got her drawers, her chemise, a petticoat, and then her dress. It definitely needs like another petticoat underneath to really push this out. This seam where I pieced the two pieces together to make enough fabric for the skirt, you can really see it. It bothers me. Let's turn her over. I have to put, there's our, this is my gathering thread, so I haven't taken that out yet. I have to put a hook and eye right here to bring that waist in. And we've got the that nice seam going down the back. I did add about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch of length to the back, and I'll post on Instagram what that looks like. It is so subtle that it's hardly noticeable, but I bet when I put something under this, like a stiffer petticoat to push this all out, it'll make all the difference. But there's the back. Now, let's turn this around. I wonder if I could put her, there we go. I'll come out a little bit more. That's as far as I can come out. Sorry, you guys. Ugh. I need a taller boom for my camera. But what I want to do is, I'm like, okay, well, what would a really pretty apron look like over that? Very pretty. So I loved that look for sure. And then I thought, okay, this is a really old velvet ribbon, but like a cummerbund going around the waist. Looks really beautiful. And I don't dislike the pagoda sleeves so much, because I get now like the whole look of this dress. I don't think I'm going to make the undersleeves because you're just not going to see them. I'm definitely going to make this dress again. You have to have patience, and as a 61-year-old, I finally have learned that. This was my first time sewing, you know, it's like a construction, a doll dress like this, which is very similar how they would have sewn a normal adult size dress. So I think that's, you know, really cool. I love hand sewing. I do. You if you follow me, you know that. So I really loved doing all this pretty stitching. But now I'm going to do something to kind of zhuzh this up a little bit. I love it with the velvet cummerbund. I think that's really pretty. I'm not going to cut up this ribbon. What I'll do is just tie it in the back, and then you know, you'll see it like that. But anyway, that's it. It's done. And it wasn't as terrifying as I thought. This whole way of putting in the skirt, attaching it underneath the cording was very interesting. I mean, it worked. I have to take out my thread that I used to gather. It definitely worked. And I don't hate it. Like, there's the skirt, you know, kind of underneath that cording. So that's it. So I am going to sew another one of these. I really, really enjoyed it. And like I said, it wasn't as horrible as I thought it was going to be, or as tedious. And now that I know how to adjust like the pattern for this doll, I'm just going to stick with her so I could focus more on the different techniques. Because there's a whole, this book is just chock full of different patterns. And it's called Victorian Doll Clothes. Look at this dress. Oh my God, I'm dying to do that. And that's silk, and I've got silk taffeta. I have vintage silk taffeta that I'm going to cut into, right? Why not? So that's it, you guys. Any questions at all, please let me know. I'll put the book, the link to the book and whatever I used in there. I will post some photographs of Merigold in her new gown once I have the back finished and I take this out. And I'm going to add, you know, I've got lots of petticoats. I'll add a stiffer petticoat to put underneath so we really get to see the glory of this big skirt. All right, everybody, take care and happy stitching.